Is there like a standout memory or moment, or what would you say is the high point for you of your career here at Penn State?
Oh, beating Ohio State 64-14 or something like that. I was an Ohio boy in a town that, I would say 90% or more loved Ohio State. And so I loved Notre Dame. They didn't play each other. Notre Dame, had some good years, and Ohio State really didn't have a lot of great years when I was in high school. So it wasn't really like, that. It was just a little bit more of the fact that, I guess you have a chip on your shoulder. My best friend from high school was playing for Ohio State, Bobby Horne. And then honestly, the number one reason is we played so well. I mean, any Penn State fan remembers that game at Happy Valley. It was the best game I've ever been a part of in the first half. It's just like we just dominated a top 10 team in the country. I don't even know, 42-7 at halftime or something like that. And finished the game 64-14. And, there was amazing satisfaction in that kind of dominance.
Hello out there, Penn State fans. It is Ohio State week. Welcome to the obligatory PSU Pregame Show on the YouTube channel of For the Bloggy. So, guys, I think I want to start out this week just by thanking the folks at forthebloggy.com for letting us come back and share our thoughts on this exciting Penn State football season with all of you. If you're a loyal fan who has listened to our podcast or watched us on television, we're not on TV this year. I don't know if we're coming back. It's a possibility, but we're taking a little sabbatical this year to rest and recharge our batteries, and we appreciate the chance to come talk to you on YouTube. If you haven't seen our show before, it's pretty much this: drinking, Penn State football, and nonsense. Penn State alums, Penn State fans, I'm your fake host, Chris Buchignani. I am joined first and foremost by beloved campus icon, Mike The Mailman.
Hi, everybody. We're here.
Utz fan extraordinaire.
That's right. Ultimate fan. That's right. I'm the ultimate fan.
Another one of our challenges this season is just the logistics of getting the four of us together on this panel. So for our first episode, remoting in from outside Philadelphia, former Penn State and NFL defensive tackle Brandon Noble. What's happening, Nobes?
Not much. The dogs are barking right on cue as soon as we start recording. So I am excited to be here, as are Joe, Lily, and Peggy.
I love it. They're all good boys and girls. But, that's why we're all wearing these ridiculous-looking headphones, or you guys are at least, so we can hear Noble. And last but not least, Mount Nittany Conservancy Director and Secretary Kevin Horne.
Thank you, Chris. What an enormous mistake For the Bloggy has made sullying their wonderful brands
You're right.
with our nonsense, in particular yours, Mike.
Yeah, probably mostly mine. Sure.
Cheers, boys. It's good to be back.
Good to be back.
We'll cheers you in person next week, Brandon.
Yeah,
so it's Ohio State Hate Week here in Happy Valley, and I did just want to throw up. We'll put it on the screen. I snapped that picture on my way in here tonight, boys. So that's what Happy Valley looks like right now. It's a good time. I love it. College football is the best sport. We are going to talk plenty of Nittany Lions and Buckeyes. But before we do, I just wanted to go around the table and get your thoughts on the season so far. The Nittany Lions are 6-0. Yep. They are bouncing back and forth between 7 and 6, back down to 7 this week, which I don't really worry about at all. But what have you seen so far, Mailman?
Well, I'm sort of confused about the whether it's the offensive line's not that good or the two major running backs aren't as good as they used to be. I don't think either one of them have gained any big runs over 15 yards or not. But I'm just amazed that the backup quarterback and the kid from Minnesota, Plotz.
Yes.
Both of those guys have had runs of over 20 yards. I don't know whether it's the offensive line or not. I don't know. I can't figure
that. Mickey Mail going negative right off the bat.
Well, I just can't imagine.
Episode in a year.
But also the one thing that really stands out in my mind, I don't care if they ever throw a pass over 30 yards or 20 yards. I've been watching football for 93 years. I love sending a 5-yard pass to the tight end and let it go. it's never get intercepted that way. So let's keep it.
That's why I'm a little surprised to hear you ragging on the lack of long run. What do you don't like first downs, Mike the Mailman? You don't like methodical drives?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know if you've paid attention to practically any of the games we've managed to win against Ohio State over the years, but we haven't typically won them with a ton of big plays. It was 63-14 notwithstanding.
Yeah. Didn't we have a kickoff return once against them? I think.
Yeah, it didn't work out so well.
I know we did. I remember that.
Okay. I'm going to go over to you, Kevin. Thoughts on the Nittany Lions so far in 2023?
I'm just worried about going 1-0, Chris. So we're putting that in the rearview mirror. Ohio State.
That's right.
No, I mean, I think it's been sort of a boring year. It's just demolishing every team. This is really James Franklin's wet dream, just beating up on far inferior talent. That's how you get to the playoffs, boring the heck out of your fans. No, I mean, look, the West Virginia and Iowa games, there's a lot of hype leading up to them. I don't think we ever thought we were in any danger at all. It's been boring, which is, I guess, nice, but also, I mean, I kind of want some excitement. I think we'll get that.
I think we're about to get it. Yeah, don't you worry.
Start, yeah.
But it's been really an uneventful half of a season as far as I'm concerned. Everything has sort of played out, other than the running backs are reliable, but maybe not great after first contact. Everything else has sort of played out, I think, as folks expected. Maybe Drew has been good, not great. Maybe that's some people thought he'd be great right out the bat. I don't know, but really good, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah.
Careful with the football, which is important for sure. James likes that.
But you missed some things, right? Like I don't think the point is Mike. He's not taking shots downfield. It's that the shots he has taken, he's missed, and he's real quick to check down. Biggest example being in Illinois when Penn State didn't have the lead yet, and Keandre Lambert-Smith is wide open in the end zone. He checks down to the tight end or the second wide receiver at 5 yards. So there's maybe a little bit of antiness about throwing a first interception. Kind of been nice to get that out of the way before Saturday. But
at least he doesn't have happy feet. I mean, he knows, really, I think he's great at that. I think he's a smart player.
I think his pocket presence and his footwork is actually pretty strong.
Definitely.
Well, I was just going to throw you an open-ended question, but look, the conversation around this team has largely been around that question. Lack of explosive plays, certainly lack of downfield passing after the infamous Corey Geiger press conference from last week. So let me ask you that first, and if you want to tack on anything else after that. You're looking at this from the perspective of a defensive guy. You played defensive tackle, you're a defensive coach. When you watch Penn State's offense, what's your take on all this?
Well, I think they're methodical, right? Like it's they just kind of move down the field and they take what a defense gives them. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I do think, as we talk about the Ohio State game, you definitely need to be explosive to match explosiveness with Ohio State's offense. But I think that this offense has done what they needed to do. They've done it in the manner that has been maybe the most conservative, but also very effective, and you take what the defense gives you. And with a first-year starter at quarterback, it makes sense. But at the same time, I understand the fans wanting to see a little bit more. But look, there's a lot of weapons, a young quarterback, a good offensive line, and they've played within themselves. And I think, kind of going to the boring part that Kevin was talking about, I get that too. It has been boring. But they have not seemed to play to the level of their opponents, which I think is a good thing. Again, as you're just kind of looking for things over the course of the first 6 weeks, is they beat everybody, which they should have beat everybody, especially when you look at how good all these teams really are that they've played. Going back to looking, at Iowa and those things, and obviously UMass this last weekend, they've done what they're supposed to do, and now's the test, right? So unfortunately, a good chunk of the season hinges on what happens Saturday, in Columbus.
Yeah, I don't think that strength of schedule and all this concern about who we've beaten so far and how they're playing in their other games, I don't think any of it really matters.
Right.
I think this is a 2-game season, and I think we're about to play the first game of that 2-game season. Like, to the point where I feel like the way things are shaking out nationally, if we don't win both the Ohio State and Michigan games, I'm not sure there's a very clear path to the playoffs for Penn State. And if we do, I don't know that it really matters if we stub our toe and drop a game like at Maryland is a game people look at as a trap game or something. I think you're basically looking at both of these contests and saying, this is it. You got to win them both. And we can actually take the 1-0 mantra this week because that's the game that's right in front of it. So it's Ohio State.
It's not unforeseeable that there's going to be 5 undefeated conference champions, and then there's actually a handful of group of 5 teams that are going to go undefeated that don't have a chance to get in, like Air Force, teams like that. I mean, Florida State has Duke this weekend, and then nobody. Georgia has nobody till the SEC championship game. Oklahoma, Washington. I mean, there could be some chaos in those divisions, but really, I mean, Oklahoma is going to be 10-point favorites or more for the rest of the season until the championship game.
And given the fact that we have not exactly scheduled a murderer's row outside of the 2 top 10 opponents or top 5 opponents on the schedule, if you're talking about being a one-loss team, number one, you're worrying about all those Big Ten tiebreakers. So you are watching Northwestern and Illinois and soon to be 11-1 Iowa potentially, and saying like, hey guys, keep winning to maybe try to sneak you in on that 5th tiebreaker if there's round robin 1-loss scenario between Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. But the point is, you drop either one of these games, and you're probably chasing playoff position for the rest of the season. So the easiest thing to do is just go out and win.
Sure,
easy.
Sure, easier said than done. But yeah, I mean, if Penn State goes 12-1 with the Big Ten championship win, it's going to be hard to keep them out unless there are 5. Or the other 4 conferences have undefeated conference champions. But,
yeah, I really don't. I don't want to start being in that conversation with Texas or Oklahoma or whoever. Like, just
we're fine over Texas, but Oklahoma
15-0, right?
Yeah, 15,
right,
still 15-0. Yep, no problem. No problem.
So Brandon,
No problem. We're fine. No problem. It's easy to win 15 games.
I know you say that all the time. Going undefeated is a piece of cake, right?
It is.
Yeah, right.
And nevertheless, you, sir, are living proof that it can be done. It can be done in Happy Valley. And as we've discussed on the podcast before, you're part of one of the 2 Penn State teams in 1994 that has beaten Michigan and Ohio State in the same season. It's only happened twice. Won the conference both times, 08 and 94. So you've done both. You've beaten the Buckeyes. Yeah. You've lost to the Buckeyes. When you look at the matchup between this year's teams, what's your general feeling?
Well, I think that my dogs found me, first and foremost, and I didn't close the door far enough. I do think that, it's a challenge, right? To win it all, right, we talked about, and it is hard to do. I was a part of it in a weird way because I was a young guy starting on a team that I had no business starting on. So I was just trying to survive. But to go beat both of those teams in this is the year to do it. I really think this is the year to do it. And I sound like Mike the Mailman, but I think this is a year that we match up really well against Ohio State. I do think that it's a year where we have the ability to play with Michigan, who I think has kind of tilted the scales a little bit in their direction as far as the balance of power on this side of the Big Ten. But it's going to take a monumental effort, and you're going to have to play really well. And the scary thing before we get too far into the Ohio State game, right, is going back to kind of what Kevin said. It's been kind of boring. All of a sudden, when you find yourself in that real football game, who are you and what are you? And how do you play? How do you handle that? It's not going to be 63-0. It's going to be a challenge. And so I think those are things that we're going to find out a lot about this football team this weekend, and kind of who they really are and how good they really are.
The Lions makers are really, really good about football. They know football. And that line's 4.5.
It's down at 3.5. The money was pouring in early on the Nittany Lions.
I mean, normally,
really,
when Penn State plays at Ohio State, the line is usually a lot more. I mean, like 5 or 6 points more. So I don't know.
Well, and 3.5 points, Mike, neutral site. That means Penn State's favored by a point, point and a half. In a Beaver Stadium, they'd be 4 or 5 point favorites.
Yep.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yep.
So the last time we all sat around this table, and Noble sent in his remote season record prediction. You, of course, like you always do, you don't worry about what losses to predict because you just think it's 15-0 every season, right? So therefore, you can't be taken seriously as somebody who's actually making a prediction.
Okay.
Mike. Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Noble and I actually both picked Penn State to go 11-1.
That's right, you did.
And we both looked at this game as the one that we thought Penn State would get, even though another thing we've only done twice since we've joined the Big Ten is win at the Horseshoe. And that was 2008 and 2011. So we went a long time. We started playing in the conference in 93. We didn't win at the horseshoe till 2008. But if you look at the way the teams match up, Penn State has been built to beat Ohio State. You think we've closed the gap. They've maybe regressed to the mean just a tad. You think about that 08 game. I know I've seen this circulating around a little bit. Had Darrell Clark, starting quarterback, a Youngstown, Ohio guy.
That's right.
Terrell Pryor, Jeanette, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Once again, we got an Ohio kid starting for Penn State. We got a Pennsylvania kid starting for Ohio State. And, don't even give me the Bo Prabula stuff because Pat Devlin came off the bench for the Nittany Lions in that game. And he mostly handed the ball to Evan Royster, but he did quarterback sneak in the go-ahead score for Penn State in that game. So, yeah, as I'm listening to you guys talk, I'm thinking about Michigan, I think, is the cream of the conference right now. The reason why I picked Penn State to beat Ohio State and lose to Michigan is that I think we're a bad matchup for Michigan. I think I really respect the talent and the way they play ball. And I think we're a favorable, comparatively, matchup for Ohio State. But then I'm thinking about the fact that Michigan is going to go all the way to their trip to Happy Valley in November before they play anybody. I mean, they will not have been tested at all. Meanwhile, Ohio State had to go to South Bend and win a tough game against a Notre Dame team that I think is still pretty good. I think USC was maybe a little bit overrated, but a quality team. So they've absolutely faced the toughest opponent of any of the top three teams in the Big Ten East.
Well, imagine if we scheduled Notre Dame, our coach would kill. There would be a murder. There would be a murder on campus if we ever scheduled Notre Dame.
Well, I know from listening to Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt that no one in the country is a bigger advocate for scheduling tough out-of-conference games than James Franklin.
No doubt. Well, I agree with you, Chris. I mean, frankly, Michigan should be number one in the country instead of Georgia at this point. I mean, they're just an absolute wagon. They've had an even more boring season than we have, right? They haven't even had like a slow start like we did against Illinois and Northwestern. They've just been wagging from opening kick to the end. So I agree with you. I kind of wish that we had them on the road if you're going to chalk that up, at Ohio State at home, so we were actually favored in one of those two games and maybe have a better chance of splitting them. But I guess if you want to take all the marbles and win them both, it's good to have Ohio State on the road and Michigan at home.
Yeah.
Because Michigan is like the best team in the country on paper so far, as far as I'm concerned.
One team at a time. The Buckeyes is more than enough to worry about. So if you've been a loyal viewer of the show, as we get towards the end, we do two things. We have a little something for the degenerate gamblers among you from Mike The Mailman. He gives you a couple of historical trends you can bet on. Honest to God, I am not making this up. He called me last week before the NFL games, and he says, "Hey, Chris, I know you're not going to believe this, but the Browns are the trend pick this week." I hand to God. So Mike's going to give you a couple of trends, and maybe you can make a little money. Although, of course, all disclaimer, it's not whatever. You're the lawyer. It's not our fault if you don't make any money. Is the point. And then we'll come back and we'll do our score predictions, what we like to call the random number generator. So here it is: Trends to Treasure with Mike the Mailman.
Hi, everybody. Mike the Mailman here with this week's version of Trends to Treasure for the weekend of October 21st. First up, we have Minnesota at Iowa. Iowa is 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 games versus Minnesota. And actually, the number of Iowa is -4. I thought the number was a little low, so that could be a really good trend. Next up, we have North Carolina versus Virginia. UNC is 6-1 against the spread, 6 out of the last 7 games versus Virginia. So take the UNC minus, actually a high number, -23.5. But Virginia has not shown a lot this year either. Thirdly, we have the TCU versus Kansas State. Kansas State has covered 5 of the last 6 games against TCU's, and Kansas State right now is a -6.5. So go with Kansas State. And I do have one total trend. We have Rice at Tulsa. The total has gone over the last 7 games. The Rice has played Tulsa on the road. So take Rice at Tulsa to go over. That's the 4 trends this weekend. Have a good time, and don't forget, bet with your head and not with your heart. Go get them.
That's my favorite part of the show.
Is it?
You know that.
Oh, that's
yeah,
good. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Well, second favorite. My favorite part is when it's over, which is coming up soon.
Let's go to the homeless shelter in State College and see if it's their favorite part of the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Obligatory PSU Pregame Show. I'm your fake host, Chris Buchignani, with Mike The Mailman, Kevin Horne, and Brandon Noble coming to us remotely. Thanks for joining us for some pre-Ohio State nonsense here on the forthebloggy.com YouTube channel. To Mike's point earlier about the lack of explosive run plays, and is it the O-line? Is it the running backs? Is it the tight ends and the wide receivers blocking downfield? If you want the answer to that question, you can find it right here on Coach Caduti's weekly video study. So you can be smarter than Mike the Mailman if you watch the For the Bloggy YouTube channel. Quite a claim. All right, so random number generator, where we give our score predictions. Before I get into it, I'm going to revisit a question I asked in our little season record prediction segment. If Penn State cannot win at least one of these two games, is this season a failure?
I'm never going to call it a failure, Chris, because 10-2 Penn State goes to the New Year's Six Bowl, and that is always, as far as I'm concerned, a success. That'll actually get you in the playoffs starting next year for perpetuity. I think most fans would probably call it a failure at that point because you're just beating up on really a terrible Big Ten conference other than the top three and losing when it matters. But I'm never going to say a trip to a New Year's Six Bowl is a failure, especially given some of the seasons that we've had, especially around the COVID years. So
that's interesting. So your reputation, I don't know if you're aware of this on this show, is as the, quote, negative one. But yeah. I think that's a pretty balanced, trending, positive type of view.
Well, yeah, forgive me for being negative when the team goes 4-5 and then outside of a bowl game. Sorry. I don't think I've been negative since then.
Do I need to ask you,
No.
like?
Yes. No, that's not a no. That's not a bad year. A good year.
No, quickly. 10-2. Failure, yes or no?
No.
Missed opportunity, yes. Failure, no. I agree with Kevin. I think 10-2 New Year's Day game is a win in my book, but I think it's an opportunity for James and the program to kind of be what he says they are.
He's been here for 10 years. I'm the only one. I am just going to come out and say it like, yes, that's a failure. Because you set the standard after the 2018 Ohio State game is we don't want to be great. We want to be elite,
That's
right? That is the philosophy behind all the moralizing about, we need better facilities, and all the moralizing about, everybody's got to pony up their wallet while there's like the grocery prices have doubled in the last year because of inflation, because we got to pay for NIL. And, we got to pay our assistants more, and we got to pay our coaching more, which I'm in favor of all of that stuff, except maybe the lazy river. It is to win this game. And this game, as far as I'm concerned, this is Ragnarok, guys. Like,
nice.
This is the last time this is really going to matter. Because to Kevin's point, after this season, you can lose one or even two games, and they're throwaways. They're mulligans, because they're going to be 12 teams that get into the playoffs, and you're going to be playing 4 or 5 big games in the Big Ten every year because of conference realignment. So this is the year you got to do it. And this is the game you got to get, not just to keep the dream alive of the playoffs, but to prove that everything that has been done here for the last decade has been for something other than marking time. So I've gone back and forth on that question since I asked it back in August. And as I thought about it this week, my conclusion is if Penn State doesn't get it done in at least one of these two games, it's a great season. I'm not going to denigrate it. I'm not going to knock the effort of the kids. But is it a failure? In my eyes, yeah, it is. So let's go to Columbus and get it done. Are they going to do it, Kevin Horne?
Which, by the way, is profoundly depressing because I can hardly think about anything else already. We're filming this early in the week. I can hardly think about anything but the game. Next season, it's not even going to matter. It's not even going to matter. I mean, really, it's not going to matter at all. The only thing, it may even be, we're going to go 10-2, and then that means what do I get? I get a trip. I have to go watch Florida State on campus in the first round. Oh no, how horrible is that? I mean, yeah, it's a shame what's happening there because these kind of big games, and of course the counter argument as well. It's Ohio State. You're always going to get up for it. I don't think quite as much. I think ticket prices will reflect that coming in the future, and I think the general sentiment will end up reflecting that as it becomes more NFL.
This is the eye of the college football storm this week.
Right. This is it. The last real college football season, as far as I'm concerned. Before the TV networks and the Nate Bowers of the world just wreck it. So when it goes to 12 teams, it's done. Anyway, Do they do it? I don't know. I mean, it is their best shot. Ohio State lives in the air, and finally they have a quarterback that seems somewhat vulnerable in the air, and Kyle McCord. McCord to Harrison, Marvin Harrison Jr. has been sort of unstoppable. But there has been some vulnerabilities, and Penn State has the best pass defense statistically in the country. So matches up well there. They also have like a 2 running back show. They're good, not great, kind of like us this year. Ohio State's number 3 wide receiver. I won't do him the disservice of mispronouncing his name, but it's double E.
Emeka Ebuka.
There we go.
Nice.
He is likely not to play because of an injury, which is helpful to Penn State. They can get some revenge on Julian Fleming, who's in his 17th season at Ohio State since he decided not to come to Penn State. So it matches up as good as it ever has. Can you pick him? I don't know. I like him to cover. Am I going to pick him? I don't know.
It's a random number generator. Give me some random numbers.
28 to 24 Penn State.
Yeah, okay, all right. Mike the Mailman, let's keep the positivity rolling. What do you got?
I like Penn State winning by 9. I think Penn State will easily win this game. Easily win this game. I don't know what you guys are talking about. There's no problem. No problem.
By 9.
If you were not by leaps and bounds the most liked member of this cast, I might just fire you right here.
Like,
Easily. Oh, yeah, it's a piece of cake, Noble.
piece of cake.
Yeah. Okay, Brandon, randomly generate some numbers.
34-28 Penn State.
Oh!
That's the way.
All right, well, I am going to take us out with my prediction. I've been uncharacteristically, perhaps, I don't know, Mr. Negativity today. Nevertheless, I did predict Penn State to win the game, but the very first season we did this show was 2016. And we were a bad team, it seemed, through 4 games.
That's right.
And then we beat Minnesota, but we needed overtime to do it. And then we beat Maryland, and they stunk. Yeah. And we were unranked, and Ohio State was number 2, and I picked us to lose by like 40 points.
I remember.
Or something.
I do remember.
It was a disaster. Yep. And ever since then, I have tried to reverse jinx Penn State by picking Ohio State to beat us by like 50 points. And it hasn't worked, not one damn time. So I am abandoning that.
Good.
And I am going to randomly generate a score of the Nittany Lions in a hard-fought contest. Nothing easy about it at all. In fact, one that is very reminiscent of that 2008 game. I have Penn State winning this one 17-13.
Nice.
But we all got the Nittany Lions. And again, if you're a first-time viewer, this is not always the case.
No,
I mean,
right.
other than Mike the Mailman, we're not a homer show. We try to call it like we see it. But I think this team is different. I think we have closed the talent gap on Ohio State. I think we are as well coached, top to bottom, with this staff as any team in the conference. And I think psychologically, this is the closest locker room and the tightest team that James Franklin has had. And it also happens to be the best team. And that's a great combination. That's a great recipe for winning on the road. So if we're going to do it, if we're going to win Ragnarok before none of this matters after this season, it's got to be this Saturday at noon in Columbus. And I think by hook or by crook, the Nittany Lions find a way to do it. Parting thoughts.
It's a good time to live here, Chris, like the 3 of us do, mostly. Because you can just feel it. You just feel it downtown.
And I want to keep that feeling going. I want to keep it going.
It's a Monday when we're recording this, and you can just feel it in the leaves and in the town and walking on Allen Street. You can just sense it. And I hope that continues to be the case after this season. Like, I don't want to harp on what I just harped on again as far as playoff expansion goes, but there's just, even though it's an away game, you can just sense there's something in the air.
A heck of a lot of my friends are going to the game. I mean, not as many friends as usually goes. But a lot of people are going. I think the crowd's definitely in it. I mean, the fans are in it. It's unbelievable.
It is, by the way, the most expensive away ticket since Notre Dame 2006.
Yes.
Wow.
Hopefully it does not end the way that game did.
Cheapest get-in price as we speak right now with fees is $375, which is the most expensive away ticket since Notre Dame.
Wow.
And I know because I have bought tickets for all of them. So
That's what you have.
Noble, what do you got?
I was just sitting here. You brought up the 2016 season, and I just was remembering how much we used to drink when we did this show, and how much fun it was to go up there and get absolutely sloshed and talk about Penn State football. And I got to go downstairs and probably pour myself a bourbon now.
Well, the good news or bad news for the Bloggy YouTube viewing audience is that win or lose, we will be back to either celebrate or commiserate with all of you. And Noble will be up here, and I promise we'll do plenty of drinking before, during, and after the show.
we will have some 4-packs of Anti-Fragile Brewing Company
Ooh.
next week, the
Yes,
official
sir.
brewery of
Yes.
the obligatory PSU
Oh,
pregame
definitely.
show.
So
Nice.
please, God, football gods, the universe, whatever providence you believe in, let's have those be celebratory beers, boys. Cheers. Go State. Beat the Buckeyes. Take care of yourselves and each other. We are. For thebloggy.com.